Welcome to Therapy Unlocked, where we discuss all things therapy from an unlocked perspective. I'm Emily Huffman, and I'm here with Katrina.
Hello, Katrina Mondragon, licensed professional counselor. All right, so like I said, I am a professional, but not your professional, so nothing we're going to talk about today should be taken as medical, legal, or otherwise advice. This podcast is purely for education and amusement. That is it. That's the disclaimer.
Education, amusement, and because I would like to be famous. So please like, subscribe, follow, engage, hate on us, join the conversation, find us on YouTube, find us on Instagram, find us anywhere where you listen to podcasts, because I love a creeper and I love a hater and I love a lover. So if you like the podcast, if you dislike the podcast, I'd like to hear from you. Angry does not mean that you are mean. If you are angry and you equate that to you being mean, that has more to say about your history. That has more to say about your past. That has more to say about the people who raised you to interpret those feelings than it does about you yourself. Being angry and being mean are not the same thing. Feeling sad does not mean that someone is broken. If you are sad, your life is not, you are not failing at life because you are sad. Several people I know have that up in their head. I have the dumps today, or I have depression. Oh, you'll get better. And they really mean that. Like, you'll get better. No, you can be sad. That's okay. That's part of that human experience, you know?
There's a movie that explains that, Inside Out.
Yes. I love that movie Inside Out because it really broke that down in such a great way for this generation.
You don't know how many parents called me saying, my kids said they got voices in their head. And I'm like, it's okay. There's this movie. It's okay.
Yep. I love Inside Out, and I love there's a digital short on the Disney Plus streaming service that I think it's the digital short. It could be the new movie. I don't know. But the kids were showing it to me, and it shows the mom's emotions, and the mom has just a slightly like a more neurotic, like anxious, like general depiction of her emotions inside of her head. And my kids saw that and they were like, why are the moms different than the dads? And we had a whole conversation about that, about how we thought that went. I love the creators of Inside Out for that. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that they gave kids that agency and gave them that language. So I had a random question, but I was doing some reading when I was preparing for this episode, and I was thinking a lot about anger, and I found 5 stages of anger. Have you ever heard of this?
That's not the grief stages. 5 stages of anger. I've probably heard of it. I've not ever memorized.
The postulation is that there's 5 stages of anger. They are mild irritation, indignation, wrath, fury, and rage. So this puts rage at the very top, right? And then mild irritation at the very bottom. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, we can make it fit into this framework. Like, my brain is thinking I can make it fit into this framework, anger. But does it fit into this framework? Are there just 5 stages of anger? Or do you feel like there is a much broader spectrum to the emotion of anger?
I think there's a much broader spectrum because I don't put things in little boxes. But I Googled it just because I had never Googled it. And the 5 stages of anger that came up was trigger, escalation, crisis, recovery, and depression. So I don't know what your source is. I'm curious.
Yeah. I'll have to go back to my saved. My saved items. Yeah, no, actually mine just pulled up the same thing too when you just type in 5 stages of anger. Oh no, it's 5 phases of anger. And it looks like this one came from Man, do I get on some weird stuff when I read late at night. Insight for Live in Canada. I don't live in Canada.
Shout out
But
to
this
Canada.
article is Insight for Live in Canada. This is not Canada, nor do I live in Canada. That said, though, I don't know, that general idea that we can categorize it, that we can put anger into, it looks like there's some on YouTube too that have different 5 stages in there. So maybe people are just using that as a clickbait or a buzzword when you type it in that way. I was looking at anger in a broader scope while I was reading about it. But that said, the idea that we can categorize anger in that way, in a shorter way. So I'm looking at anger management, and it seems like that's a general repeated principle is, what level is your anger, right? With there being, a range between mild to severe. And I'm not sure if anger can be categorized in that way. I think it's such a very complex emotion.
Sometimes it's useful and sometimes it's useless. And it's the only one that I say sometimes use avoidance. If you avoid the person, place, or thing that's making you angry for about 30 minutes, but no more than 24 hours, you will return physiologically to a state of more calm and able to be thinking more clearly to address the situation how you prefer. The reason I say no more than 24 hours is because then you're kind of running up against sweeping it under the rug and not addressing it at all.
I definitely get into avoidance, sweeping it under the rug, not addressing it at all. That's the number one Emily tactic for sure. Let me tell you, because feelings jars are great. So are silent modes on your cell phone. Those ones are great too. When there's something going on. That said, though, so categorizing emotion, using your anger as a road sign, not so much as a road map of what to do next, but as something that lets I'm having an emotional reaction right now. Um, and I like to joke that I did reverse anger management, but I had a hard time accessing being angry, right? I would start at angry and slide very quickly to scared, slide very quickly to what I eventually was able to interpret as scared. And so my fear of being angry would shut down. I would gaslight myself in an argument before anybody else had a chance to gaslight me because I didn't want to have that argument. I would go back to, like you're saying, tell myself a story, but telling myself that story would generally benefit whoever I was angry at because, man, I did not want to have whatever confrontation or whatever else was going on. Had I looked closer at my anger and seen it as a useful tool in my life, I probably would have done myself more favors instead
Can you
of,
define gaslighting for people who don't know?
oh yeah. So gaslighting, I would say that I'm not a professional, obviously. I don't know. How many hours does it take to become a professional? Because I've certainly been gaslit at least as many hours as I was for my college degree. No, gaslighting is when someone tells you their version of reality, and they're very, very good at it. Usually, if they're an effective gaslighter, then they're going to tell you their version of reality, and they're going to convince you that is the reality. So maybe it's something as simple as I saw a text message come through on your phone and they say, no, you didn't. You're so insecure. You're imagining things. You're always coming up with stories like this. There's all kinds of tactics that can be thrown in to make gaslighting more effective. But at the end of the day, they have a version of reality that they want you to believe. And that is what it is. They're holding their light to that version of reality, and actual reality not so relevant. you know
Right. And that's why I think empathetic fallacies are just that, a fallacy, because it is unnecessary to try and be empathetic to somebody who's trying to gaslight you.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining Therapy Unlocked as we unlock the mind one conversation at a time, discussing all things therapy from an unlocked perspective. You can find Therapy Unlocked on most major streaming platforms, wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. We are also present on YouTube and Instagram, and we hope that you will like, follow, subscribe, and join the conversation. We'll see you next week as we continue the dialogue and continue unlocking the mind one conversation at a time. Have a great one.